forces have toppled the regime of Syria President Bashar al-Assad after a fast offensive that only took a few days. Syrian residents poured onto the streets of major cities, pulling down statues and celebrating the end of 54 years of Assad dynasty rule. Russian officials say Assad has left Syria and is currently in Moscow, where he has been granted asylum. Let's hear more from NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald in London. Megan, where do things stand now?
Well, Rev, just as you mentioned, over the course of the day, we've been seeing celebrations from people rejoicing in the streets, celebrating the fall of this repressive Assad regime. We're seeing video of people being released from Assad's notorious prisons. And of course, important to note, Amnesty International called those prisons human slaughterhouses, where mass hangings and exterminations took place, where people were tortured. Many Syrians believe that they are now free. So we are seeing an emotional day for so many. A moment that really gives people hope. But the big question now is what happens next? How will the country be governed moving forward? HTS has recently said that the Syrian people don't need to fear them, that they will respect minority groups. But while there has been a lot of celebration, this is also a moment of great uncertainty for the Syrian people. But how we got here, is something that shocked a lot of people. We're talking about a lightning fast offensive here, which kicked off less than 2 weeks ago, where the rebels captured Aleppo. But it really accelerated over the last 48 hours. And it certainly appears as though there was very little resistance here. So last night, rebels took over the Homs, which is the largest province in Syria, seizing control of the Syrian-Lebanese border and cutting off the road between Damascus and the Syrian coast, which significantly weakened the Assad regime. Hours later, the rebels led by HTS said that they are in control of Damascus and the country. Again, how will Syria be governed? What will happen next? Of course, these are all the questions that remain to be seen. Rev?
Thank you, NBC's Megan Fitzgerald in London. Now to politics. Joining me now is Congressman Adriano Espaillat, Democrat of New York, and the new chairman-elect of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Congressman, let's start with, first of all, it's good to see you as always. I have to start with the situation in Syria right now. We just heard that a rebel insurgency has toppled the Assad regime after 50 years of rule. We've heard from both President Biden and President-elect Trump today as this story has developed. But what is your reaction?
Well, this has been 50 years of oppressive government in Syria. And finally, the people of Syria get a fresh breath of liberty. However, we must engage them immediately. We must not resort to all habits where we isolate new governments and new folks that come into power based on stereotypes or international gossip. We should deploy our top diplomats to the region to engage the new government and ensure that we have some influence and the ability to work with the new government in Syria. I think it's important that we do that, and we do that immediately.
Now, you're coming in as Hispanic Caucus chair. It's first Afro-Latino chair-elect, by the way, while the incoming Trump team and Republican lawmakers pursue a mass deportation plan that would disproportionately impact Hispanic Americans, separating families of mixed legal status and destabilizing migrant communities across the country. The Trump team has warned states and cities to comply or risk punishment. How should Democrats in Congress fight back against this purge if it's enacted on day one, as Trump claims it could be?
Well, first and foremost, I think our job is to educate people and to make sure that communities know what their rights are across the country. And then to provide the funding for legal services that would allow these communities to have their day in court. We're still a nation that abides itself by the rule of law. And so we're expecting that the country will not take a U-turn and begin to violate people's rights. We can enforce the law without violating people's rights. Everybody has their day in court. Due process must be protected. And we will be watchful that this new effort for mass deportation, which often turns, if not sloppy, inhumane, doesn't violate the rights of people across the country. Once someone steps in the United States, they are guarded by the Constitution. And as such, everything that occurs afterwards must be within the parameters of the law.
Now, in addition to this purge he's promised, Trump has doubled down on his threats to end standing constitutional protections for immigrants. Take a listen to him on Meet the Press this morning and this weekend as he stated this.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it,
Through an executive action?
You know, we're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need two, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Trump's claim that we're the only country with birthright citizenship is just not true. Both our neighbors, Mexico and Canada, have it, as do many others. Congressman, what's your reaction to Trump's comments?
Reverend, over 36 countries in the hemisphere alone really support birthright and apply birthright citizenship, including, as you said, Mexico and Canada. So this is factually wrong. That is not the case. And again, it's enshrined in the Constitution. That right is enshrined in the Constitution. And so the Constitution is a very elastic and vigorous document that in order to amend it, you have to go through a very detailed and long process. The last time we did that, we gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. It was decades ago. So this is not a document that we go to off the cuff because we feel one thing is wrong and it should not be in place. It has to go through a rigorous process, state by state, and I doubt very seriously that the American people will support that.
Now, the next Congress will open with a record number 7 Latino senators, U.S. senators, a milestone even as Hispanic representation in the House will decrease slightly from 48 to 45. Hispanic candidates won congressional seats in 12 states last month, including historic wins in Ohio and Arizona, which elected their first Latino senators. In all, a total 52 Latino members will be part of next year's Congress. What do you take from that as the incoming chair of the Hispanic caucus?
Well, we have 39 members of the House and 4 U.S. senators. It is our highest number ever, 43. And so we have also, in addition to that, 6 new members, 6 freshman members of the caucus. We will be dealing and addressing housing issues. We will be addressing economic development through artificial intelligence. We will rebuild our relationship with Latin America and the Caribbean as formerly from other countries, myself from the Dominican Republic, but people from Mexico and Colombia and Ecuador, we should be having a stronger relationship with Latin America and the Caribbean. And finally, Reverend, I think we need to communicate better with the American people. I think we failed to do that, so we will be bolstering many tools that we will use to ensure that the American people are up to date with what we're doing in Washington and that they get educated on the immigration process.
Lastly, Congressman, going back to Trump's Meet the Press interview that aired today, he said that he can't guarantee that his promised 25% tariff on goods from Canada and Mexico won't raise prices for American consumers. Added to that, Mexico, our top trade partner and second largest source of foreign crude oil, has pledged to raise tariffs of its own on American goods. If a trade war does happen, can the U.S. survive economically without Mexico?
First of all, Mexico is as you said, is our biggest trading partner. $800 billion of trade back and forth in 2023. We have important co-production change with that country, and it will be a grave mistake to impose these very heavy on the top tariffs. I think that protecting American jobs and tariffs, there should be a balance, a very equitable balance that will guarantee that we don't have runaway prices. Remember, when we have these goods and services and you see tariffs, those folks will raise the prices and consumers will pay for it. So we will feel that impact at the cash register when we go buy these goods that are adversely impacted by these tariffs.
All right, thank you to the incoming chair of the Hispanic Caucus, Congressman Adriano Espaillat of New York. Now to some breaking news. The New York Police Department has today released new photos of a person being sought in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Midtown Manhattan last week. For the latest on the manhunt and all around it, let's get out to NBC's Priscilla Thompson in New York. Please tell us, Priscilla, what is the investigation focusing on at this hour?
Yeah, Al, good evening. Two things that the investigation is focusing on. One is Central Park. That is where the NYPD found that backpack that they believe belonged to the shooter late Friday. And we know that there have been divers in Central Park continuing to scour that area, looking through the waters there. And this is a very specialized dive team that is using a grid system to really meticulously look through those waters for any signs of evidence, particularly the possibility that the shooter may have dumped the gun somewhere in the waters in Central Park. And again, that is where they found that backpack that it had in it a jacket and also Monopoly money. That bag has since been taken to a lab where it has been inspected for fingerprints and DNA. And of course, the other big focus is the new photos that were released overnight by the NYPD, where you have a very clear picture of this person of interest's eyes. It appears he was sitting in the back of a taxi cab here in New York City. And that comes as after the NYPD did extensive really video surveillance of throughout the city to really get a sense of his movements, knowing that he came in, they believe, through Port Authority from a bus that originated in Atlanta. There's plenty of video showing the actual shooting caught on camera and then him fleeing through an alley, getting on a bike into Central Park, getting out of Central Park on a bike. And we know that police believe he got into a taxi cab